program. The next thing that I did with NMEDA was a TV show, an hour-long documentary called Changing Lives, The Road to Independence. We put together a TV show that followed two recipients, two people on their road back to mobility, a mom and a veteran. We followed them as they got their license, as they learned about vehicles, as they got back into driving, and then afterwards what they did with it. I happened to be on Amazon Prime the other day, and believe it or not, the show is still there. If you haven't seen it, I think it's highly worth watching. It was pretty neat. And more lately now, I work with NMEDA on a couple different things. Mobility My Way is a column that I share and I write because I believe that dealers, manufacturers, people like that need to know more about the end user. What is it that we get from driving? Why are we passengers? Why do we go out there? Those sorts of things. My hope is someday that will grow, maybe become a video series, you never know. There's a lot of opportunities. And then last, just a quick personal thing about me. I'm a Navy veteran. I was injured in a swing accident. I was training to fly F-14s. Sam, the fastest he's gone in cars, 240 miles an hour. Before he was hurt, 195 afterwards. My jet went a little bit faster, but the feelings were pretty much the same. And also, I'm a high school teacher. I teach history and English. So what I like to do when I start my classes is just set some ground rules, and that's kind of what I'm going to do right now. In my classes, there's no cell phone use, but here I encourage you guys to take pictures, share what you're hearing on social media. Teachers do have secret phone apps, so on my phone, I'll know what you're doing. So as long as it's related to what we're talking about, that's cool. And then the last thing is, you don't have to raise your hand if you want to go to the bathroom. Freshman boys, all the time. You guys, you don't have to. So that's kind of me in a little bit of a nutshell. Our panelists. I'm going to start with Sam Schmidt. I live in North Carolina and am very close to the motorsports industry. About 20 years ago, I got a phone call talking about a driver who was injured not far from here. I think it was in Orlando. And he was paralyzed. I had only been hurt for a few years. And that was Sam. A lot of the motorsports people talk to me about what's it like to be in a wheelchair? What's going to happen? Is he going to live? Is he going to be able to have an independent life? And I said yes. And because I believed, as I followed Sam's path, that he was going to do remarkable things. So let's fast forward now, no pun intended. And I first met Sam in person when he was driving his modified Corvette. Now, how does somebody like Sam drive his Corvette? Sam will talk about it a little bit more, but he's the first licensed driver in America to have a semi-autonomous driving license. Sam drives using his head, and sensors on a hat, sensors on headgear, and then sensors mounted around the vehicle. It's forward for gas, back for brake, left and right, am I correct? And there's probably a few little secrets in there too. What's remarkable about Sam, his technology, is he makes it available to anyone who wants to learn. It's not secret. Sam's idea, because he's a forward thinker, is to promote what he's doing, to share it, to make the world a better place. The Sam Schmidt Foundation is called the Conquer Paralysis Now Foundation. He's raised more than $20 million for paralysis research. And near his home in Las Vegas, he's opened a neuro recovery center called Driven. At no cost to participants or consumers, you can come in, use rehab equipment, use exercise equipment, and learn and be a part of whatever it is that'll make your life the best. That's Sam in a nutshell. Noah Currier is a Marine, a former Marine. I first met Noah at the National Veterans Wheelchair Games several years ago. Noah had a small booth and was selling t-shirts. I thought that's kind of cool, selling t-shirts. That's a neat thing to do. And that's where I kind of stopped, with my thinking. But what happened after that changed my world and changed my view of Noah and the power of getting behind an idea. Younger veterans started sharing in the Oscar Mike philosophy. Oscar Mike means on move, it's a military term. There was energy behind what Noah was doing. Younger veterans were getting behind it, they were becoming more active. The work that he was doing was something I had never seen before. What I did learn was Noah, his original idea was to start a foundation, the Oscar Mike Foundation. You know how you hear life happens when you're making other plans? Noah submitted his paperwork to the government, and while he was waiting for his 501c3 approval, he started making apparel. He started making t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, things like that. That's when I saw him when he applied, when he was at the Veterans Games. Well, that apparel line took off, and now if you go into Dick's Sporting Goods, if you look around the country, you see more and more people, not simply people in the military, not simply people with disabilities, but people who are behind that theory, behind that philosophy, wearing those clothes, wearing the apparel. And what Noah also does is, if those two aren't enough, is he has a full schedule of events that he participates in, that he organizes and puts teams into. He has a compound where people with disabilities can go and learn to train. What Noah has done from the first time I met him when he was sewing t-shirts has grown from his garage to a national corporation that's growing sixfold every year. That's a little bit about Noah. Rory Cooper, Dr. Cooper, is my probably longest military friend. He was an Army soldier who was injured almost 40 years ago, is that right?
July, yeah.
Coming on 40 years. I met Rory through the National Veterans Wheelchair Games. The first time I remember meeting him, he was running, and he still runs, Human Engineering Research Lab at the University of Pittsburgh. He had grad students, undergraduate students running around, hooking us up to different electronic apparel, putting things on our wheelchairs, running experiments to make lives better for veterans and for military people. His work is 6 different continents, 5 continents you've been a part of, and you've worked with universities all over the world. One of the things that I learned from Rory is that we shouldn't be limited by our disability, and the things that you can do in chairs, the things you can do in your life, doesn't have to be defined by your physical limits. Think of self-docking wheelchairs. Think of modifications to kitchens to help people who are in wheelchairs cook and be independent. Think of how you best want to push a wheelchair so your shoulders are safe. That's the stuff Rory does. More than 100 inventions, 25 at last count patents. And Rory is doing some pretty amazing things. He's also a Paralympian, by the way, swimmer.
Yep.
Racing. I know Rory from swimming, but racing, hand cycling, swimming, table tennis, across the board. Rory is doing some amazing things around the world. My most recent friend is Aaron Fotheringham. His nickname is Wheels, and to talk about Wheels, I'll share a quick story. We have a 7-year-old daughter, and just last week she came running down the aisle at our local Publix grocery store with this Hot Wheels car in her hand. Now usually when she comes running down the aisle, it's because she's got big boxes of Captain Crunch, sugary cereal, junk food she wants to slip in. And she said, Daddy, Daddy, it's Wheels, look at this. I've never seen this before. I first learned of Wheels by seeing a picture of him in a magazine, kind of dropping into a skate park in California. And I thought, that's kind of cool. Here's a kid who wants to do what he did when he was growing up with his brothers, with his friends. He's just doing it a little bit differently. what Aaron does defies description. He generates energy, he creates energy. He flies in a way that nobody else in a wheelchair does. 2005, he perfected a mid-air 180. 2006, he did the first wheelchair backflip. 2010, the first wheelchair double backflip. He's a 4-time winner of WCMX World Championships. That's wheelchair motocross, a sport that he invented. To follow Wheels is easy because kids want to do it. They want to be in chairs. They want to follow him. Wheels makes being in a wheelchair a cool thing. So before we get to a discussion, just a quick round of applause for four of the most remarkable people. So what I'd like to do is break this up, the discussion up into 4 sections. I'll throw a discussion question out to each of these guys. They'll answer, and then my hope is that some of the other guys will chime in, talk about their experiences, and make it an interactive discussion. So for Sam, I want to talk about society's mindset in the world of disability when you entered it. You were a race car driver who, for fun, would go 240 miles an hour. You were injured, and all of a sudden your life changed to 0 miles an hour. Can you talk a little bit about your mentality and your mood? What was the world like? What was the disability world like? And then when did you start to say, you know what, I want to start to do something. I want to change my life and move forward. Can you talk a little bit about that to get it going?
Yeah, thanks for having me, number one, and number two, thanks for comparing me to a high school kid, because my wife still thinks I am act that way. But 20 years ago, I was not far from here. Thanks for bringing that up. Back to the wall, 200 miles an hour, completely destroyed C3. It's not there, and was I'm not breathing, unconscious for 5 minutes. Was very lucky that the IndyCar safety crew was there to airlift me to the trauma center, and here is this state-of-the-art level 1 trauma center with supposedly the best neurosurgeon in the house at the time, who put a bunch of brackets in my neck, and my wife jumps on the red eye, comes back the next morning, and all he had to say was, well, he made it through the night, and if he makes it this week, then definitely find a nursing home, will be on a ventilator for the rest of his life, which we expect to be less than 5 years. So I'll try to locate that doctor so I can tell him a few things off my brain, but neurosurgeons aren't the smartest people in the world. That's the starters. And so, back then the internet wasn't available, or it wasn't so prolific. You couldn't just do a bunch of searches and find the best hospitals, find the best activity-based therapy, whatever, and even find clinical trials just was not existent. So, fortunately, I've got a very persistent, stubborn father and wife, and they just started dialing and calling Shepherd, calling Tesla, calling everywhere. But even then, the response was, yeah, that sounds pretty bad. We'll teach you how to live with that way. That was the response. And finally, we got Barnes Jewish in St. Louis at the time, was starting an activity-based therapy program with Dr. John McDonald, and frankly, it was driven by Christopher Reeve, being injured 5 years before. And to your point, Chris was saying, no, I've never been paralyzed. Or why not? Doctors would say this was, he'd just say, why not? Why not? Why not? And I think that's, kind of a bit of a theory here, right? No, I'm not going to take that for granted. He started working his tail off. John got motivated, started creating some things, and we got airlifted to that program, and voila, with the right attitude of the doctors and the trainers and the PTs, I was off the ventilator in 3 weeks. And to me, that changed my life forever, because I definitely wouldn't be alive right now if I was on the ventilator. It's living hell. And then again, a thing that is obscurity now. I actually got 6 months in inpatient rehabilitation. Won't happen now at all. But I was able to maximize that, and consider too that to this point, I've been married 7 years. And as a professional race car driver, I was gone 200 days a year. So after about 90 days of being at home with a steady flow of PTs and nurses and everything else, my wife was like, you need to find something to do. And so, that was kind of the first, no, we're not going to spend the rest of our life in bed watching TV. What do I love good enough for 2 hours getting up every morning, to have that kind of passion and drive every day. So I naively started a race team, and that was a year after my accident, and we've kind of been through a few different rinks, and now we're, in IndyCar and having great success there, and so, but yeah, there's a lot of naysayers, a lot of people that said, you can't get off the ventilator, you can't do the activity-based therapy because you're too high, you can't, own a racing or travel 140 days a year, or whatever it is, and so, you just gotta, I was asked, well, why not? You just gotta figure it out, and kind of break those barriers, and then, I think my next really, really huge dose of inspiration came in 2012 when I had known Ralph Braun for 10 years. We had been friends because he loved motorsports, but he invited me, to be a part of that company and to spend a lot of time with him that last year before he passed away. And that was just really inspirational because, here's a guy that had memorized a popular mechanics magazine, and just by reading it, and it just did amazing things with his engineering skills, and as we all know, created the mobility industry. So, to be a part of that has been really inspiring and motivating me. And then more recently, the Corvette. You mentioned I drive that with my head, which, again, my mom chimed in and said, well, it's the first time he ever drove anything using his head. Yeah, it's evolved, and to me, that's where I think, this industry and what we're doing, and whether it's wheelchairs, whether it's, automotive technology, whatever, I mean, the impact that technology has, the ability to make on people's lives with disabilities, is transformational. It not only makes things more convenient, it just saves lives. I'm living proof of that because the fact that they got me in a car in 5 months from start to finish, because it was a private corporation. They put 4 people in a room and said, don't come out until you fix it and get it done for them, because we had a deadline, and that was May 8500 of 2014. So they made it happen, and they continue to make it happen, to go faster, to do more challenges, to go, everything I throw at them, they say yes to so far. So yeah, it's been a ride, it's been a journey, but to this day I kind of believe that, even after all the hours of activity-based therapy, I didn't get my hours back because I can roll up to pretty much 90% of the accessible population, disabled population, call it that, say, what the hell's wrong with you? You got your arms, you got lots of other things for me, get off your butt and do something with your life. You're gonna like me, okay, go on to the next one. But, yeah, so, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Noah, Rory, what was the world like for you guys? Anything you want to share?
Well, my world was different than all of yours. I was injured prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So to give you an idea, you can be denied the right to fly, you can be denied going to rent a car, you could be denied to eat in a restaurant. Most people didn't have a job or even think about it. Even though the Rehab Act of 1973 had been passed, colleges and schools had an infinite amount of time in order to make themselves accessible. So when I went to college, I literally had to be carried upstairs by ROTC cadets. I did that because I was studying engineering. They don't want engineering students carrying up. And so it was an entirely different world. There'd be times when I wanted to fly to a sporting event or a conference, and I would ask strangers to say, well, you mind telling me you're my assistant? so that I could get on this flight. I even got arrested once in London for using the subway. So it's out to the Americans with Disabilities Act, the world is entirely different.
Yeah.
Plus, when I got injured, you could prescribe a wheelchair from across this room, because they only came in 16, 18, 20-inch widths. They were all chrome steel Indicators or Everston Jennings, and we had, brown, blue, or green, or red mountain highs. And they weighed about 80 pounds. So our life today is unimaginable compared to what it was like when I was injured.
Yeah, from a time frame perspective, I can't compare or know what it was like when that happened, but I can say I was a Marine when I was hurt. It was my last year in, and so I went from like sports growing up and skate parks as a teenager to traveling the world with a rifle and coming home and going back to Poplar Grove, Illinois, where the population sign read 700. And there's nothing, like there isn't anybody to relate to, there isn't anybody, nothing there is accessible yet, it's just a small farm town. And that was what I came home to. I mean, obviously, as an adult, I could travel anywhere that I wanted. And, I started seeing what was out there, but surrounding myself with other people with disabilities and learning from them was definitely where I got all my intel.
Yeah. Let me follow up with that with a question for you. Let's talk about leadership and the reality of getting things done with a disability. I think people in positions of leadership just kind of assume that these guys are doing things, it's easy. It's not. Talk a little bit, Noah, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit about what it means to lead and some of the additional challenges that you have, and also some of the systems that you've developed to become efficient.
All right. Well, if you think of what a normal morning is like, whether you're running a company or not, let's just say you're trying to get up and you start eating breakfast at 7 o'clock. At that point, I've already had to be up for 2 hours getting myself ready. And my dad had made a comment. I was getting ready for a meeting where I thought I was going to be sitting across the table from Mark Cuban. And I was pretty nervous about it and wondering, what do I say in this, especially if I want to get the elevator pitch. And he's like, listen, he puts his pants on just like you do every day. And I looked at my dad, I was like, the hell he does. you ever see me get ready in the morning? And, we both laughed about that, but that is a reality, and it was me even saying that and having that conversation with my dad made me realize a lot in that moment. When you're getting ready in the morning or you're showing up at the office, you probably have a million excuses, right? And maybe they would be acceptable to everybody in the building. But if, since the question, I guess, is about leadership and doing all of that, you don't want to have those excuses. You don't want to be held to a different set of standards. And, a friend of mine that, I love this comment, he was an operator at Green Beret in Afghanistan, and he has this whole talk on leadership, and he calls it rooftop leadership. And it's if you show up on the rooftop every single day for long enough, doing the right thing, other people are going to eventually join you, and you won't be alone up there. Yeah. And I think that's especially when you're doing it, when it's obvious that that your routine and your struggles might be a little bit harder than the people that walked in every morning and woke up 15 minutes before they started driving, or however that goes. And I think that's an example that everybody should try to set, but it just takes a little bit longer. When you're dealing with being a quadriplegic, for instance.
To any of you guys, what strategies do you use? How do you become more efficient with what you do, given the fact that we are physically different? People might not know that.
You always got to be thinking a few moves ahead. We were talking about that earlier.
Planning.
Yeah.
I didn't plan anything before.
Right.
I mean, it was really bad personality, and because of that, I didn't want to delegate. I thought I would do it my way, and obviously now that's out the window. but I think it's made me be able to accomplish a lot more, because now I have a race team, and the key is hiring the right people, putting them in the right positions, and letting them do their job. And because I do that, I can still be involved in that, be involved in the foundation, be involved in Driven, because I'm not relying on myself to do everything. So it's been a little called silver lining, but I don't have a choice. But it's all about the team, and I've got incredible teams. So they need the credit to that car. You said you brought up the car, and that me driving that bus. That wasn't me. That was Aero Electronics in Denver, and they're the ones that came up with the concept. I'm like, hey man, how are you gonna take that to market? How are you gonna get a return on your investment? CEO looked at like an idiot. He's like, hey, we did this to help people. Anybody that wants to use this technology to help people and implement it in industrial purposes, they can have it for free. I was like, holy crap! How many Fortune 130 publicly traded companies have that kind of mentality? I'm in, man. Send me to wherever you want to send me, because I'm moving that company. They get their mind right there, so it's a huge lesson.
Wheels, you lead in a different way. You lead by example. Do you see yourself as a leader? I mean, you've created a sport. You've literally created a sport that never existed before. Is it for fun? Do you see yourself leading? And how do you feel when other kids are following along doing what you do?
I don't know if I'm leading or being a bad influence. I mean, it's been really cool to be in a position to, kind of lead. Like I was always just having fun, like riding the parks and stuff, and it was just what I wanted to do. But eventually I found out that it had a bigger impact than just me going out there having fun, And I had to accept that I was going to be kind of in a position to, have an impact on kids. And we have these workshops at skate parks where, anyone can come, kids, adults can come out to the park, and we'll kind of teach them and kind of mentor them on how to drop into the skate park. And, the coolest part is a kid will show up and be, depressed or crying or not pumped on, being there, being on his chair, and then once we get them to drop into the skate park, it's really it just, clicks in their head, and then you can't, usually that kid is the last one to leave the park, and you gotta drag them out. But it's been really cool to be able to kind of push that.
Do you have to talk to parents and tell, hey mom, dad, it's gonna be okay if your kid does this? Do they say no? Do they try to pull their kids away and say, let's take to something a little safer?
Well, the hardest part is getting them to let us take the wheelie bars off. There's always a lot of resistance with that, but we're just he's got to get rid of them. It helps with his independence, and they just get in the way. And once you put on a pretty face and make them believe you, then you get them in a helmet and get them in the skate park. And usually after that, the parents, I feel like something clicks in the parents' head as well. They see, oh, he's having fun with this chair, and he's able to go out there and make something with it. And usually it's cool to see the transformation in the kids, but also in the parents.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's nice to hear because you lead in a very different way. You don't have a full staff. You lead by book, and that's in this day and age where there's more and more kids playing video games, being sedentary, especially people with disabilities, not being active. The obesity rate for people with disabilities is much higher than the general population. To see people out there doing what you're doing and leading in that way is pretty remarkable. If you ever surf the internet or look at the end of the year, there's always these greatest accomplishments or greatest feats of the year kind of thing. Wheels is always in there. And it's always jaw-dropping, wow stuff. So that's kind of cool. Rory, let's talk a little bit about vision. What we heard from you is when you were first disabled, the world was a very different place. You started to see, I need to make a change, I want to make a change, I can make things better. Can you share a few of your biggest projects through the years? What are you most proud of, or what are you working on now that kind of keeps you going?
What I'm most proud of is everyone on this stage is using technology that I helped develop.
Tell a little bit more about that.
Well, for example, the radial spokes on your chairs. When I was first injured, we used the crossbow pattern. But I wanted to build I had a project early on with Craig Benner when we had his company, and I was making a racing lift for Jim Canal. And I got the idea that you could mount the push rings to the spokes. And so we made the spokes radials. We did the radial spokes. People told me they wouldn't be strong enough, but we proved them wrong. And actually, as you know, Mike, you raced, we actually mounted the push rings directly to the spokes, which eliminated the need for what was called a spider at that time. You know, to the chairs that were sitting in the manual chairs, those were early on. Well, early on we used to race in basically in our everyday chair. Maybe put a little larger upholstery so you sag down a little bit and change the crossbar so you could have camber. I started with others like Bobby Hall and Marilyn Hamilton and Jeff Kneebreaker to build chairs like ours, and we raised them. And we found out you could use them for every day and be amazing. Other things is was one of the first ones to use quick release axles. So all our axles were bolt-on. I literally went to the Army surplus store and got detent pins off the helicopters from Vietnam and used those to make quick release axles. But even on power chairs, I developed some of the first digital controls, which allow Sam to drive. He's got the algorithms for his that help drive his chair to set the speed and the sensitivity of the joystick left and right. Those are inventions that I help contribute to. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of. What happened is I started inventing because I wanted better things and I needed better things. And I found out I'm not alone. There's other friends out there that were inventing and wanted to make better things. And also there were people that had needs and then would start coming and say, hey, Rory, when Marilyn Hamilton wanted to start giving power chairs with Dave Cox, so they came and talked to me and said, you want to help us develop better power chairs? So we built the P300 and the P100, which were some of the very first direct drive power chairs and with digital controls. So it's just, now it's, we formalized that process to capture ideas from thousands of people around the United States and even around the world. And I'm lucky that my wife, who was my girlfriend in the Army, is a physical therapist working in assistive technology now. And she wasn't. That happened 20 years after we were married. But, she also sees people and feeds me with new ideas. So, and then, so there are ideas that emanate from my own challenges and trying to overcome them, but listening to other people like yourself and just saying, what do we need to make everybody's life better?
First time you saw Wheels fly, what did you think about his wheelchair, what he was doing? Had you ever envisioned something like that happening?
Well, I've done it myself a few times, just not on purpose.
I just have to say thank you for the quick release pins because it makes changing bent wheels a lot easier.
I thought it was awesome because I was around when doctors said you shouldn't do marathons, it'll kill you, or in the Paralympics, great athletes with similar conditions to yours should do over 400 meters. And so I watched people, I was one of the first ones to do an Olympic level triathlon. And people said that was impossible. So it's only natural that other generations are gonna, new sports will evolve and other generations will push those limits. And I just thought it was, awesome, a little hair raising. I'm not sure at my age I'd want to try it, but I also
I
think,
wouldn't allow it.
I can tell you, I was in Germany a couple of years ago at the Rehab conference in Dusseldorf, and they had a whole sports club built around using wheelchairs and skate parks, and they had kids 7, 8 years old in the park demonstrating things. It was pretty awesome to see them smile, see the attitude of the parents change, and see the attitudes of the people that were coming to the conference change as well.
You talked a lot about people saying no and not believing it. A lot of your work is based on getting funding. How do you convince people? How do you work with people to say, this is a project that's worth investing in?
It's difficult. I mean, I think one of the challenges is that we haven't gotten to the point where we have other scientists and engineers with disabilities reviewing grants about the work that involves us. In the advocacy field, it's talk about nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
But in the scientific field, that's the norm, right? Everything is about us without us. So you just have to convince people that you're doing the right thing. I know that a lot of people say one of the things that's described as I'm just tenacious, right? You just got to keep at it until you do convince them that it's going to make a difference and it's the right thing to do. And so we've been fortunate to build the world's largest center for technology related to people with disabilities, and convince other people to follow along. And then not only that, to help spur centers in other countries like Mexico, Brazil, China, Korea, Japan, India. Where my former students or other colleagues have sort of followed along. And the need's still tremendous. Like, I won't live long enough to solve all of our problems, but that's all the while you got to engage the next generation as well.
Noah, you're in a position where people are coming to you and wanting to help your company grow. Talk a little bit about, was it Shark Tank? And you were approached, I think, twice. People want to get behind what you're doing. Talk about that. Is that hard? Rory here, Rory trying to convince people, invest in this, invest in this. And you have people coming to you and saying, I want to invest in this.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy, for one. I think that's often a misconception, but we do, people definitely do come to us wanting to know what they can do to help out. And I guess it's a fortunate place to be in sometimes that, but at the same time, I think it becomes kind of obvious when you show people, or when groups that come to us asking if they can get behind it, typically what they've seen or in our initial meetings, I'll show them pictures of people with disabilities or able-bodied people all over the country or world even now, with like a city next to their Oscar Mike tattoos, and say, I've never asked anybody to get a tattoo. For some reason, they're doing it all over, and it has nothing to do with the brand. It has nothing to do with the foundation even. It's a lifestyle. It's something that everybody can get behind, especially if they've had to come up from behind, or deal with something. So I think that movement, everybody believes in, whether you're able-bodied or not, and it's something you want to get behind, or can get behind.
So if I can add something, one thing I think is pretty cool is last year I was given a trading card by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So in 2012, they started issuing trading cards to help inspire children to become innovators and inventors. And they recognized 28 people in the history of the United States, to include people like Thomas Edison and Nicholas Tesla, and Steve Wozniak, And what's really cool about that is it kind of brings the work that we're doing into the mainstream. So it's nice that the patent office said, you know what, this is not a fringe thing. People with disabilities are really part of society, they're a main part of society. And so I was honored to sort of represent all of us in some way. That the people with disabilities and the technology that we use and develop is as important as the personal computer or the light bulb.
Thank you for sharing that. Wheels, let's talk about limits. There don't seem to be many in your life. From what I've seen, you started by dropping in an escape park. I don't think you knew at the time what it is that you were going to do. You're pushing the boundaries, you're pushing the barriers. And one of the things that I really like, the more I learn and the more I interact with you is your approach to disability. You aren't, I always hated this term, wheelchair bound. You are not wheelchair bound. You are not in a wheelchair.
You watch a video, he's out of it a lot more than he's in it.
You ride on a wheelchair. And when I hear people interview you, you say, I ride my wheelchair. Like somebody would ride a skateboard, like somebody would ride a bike. You kind of show, you get away, you take people away from the I feel sorry for you to the jaw-dropping wow. That's pretty remarkable. Walk us through what goes through your mind when if something does, I really want to hear this, as you're coming up with new tricks and new stunts, new things to do. What is it about? What keeps you going? What pushes you to come up with these things?
Oh man, I would say for me, one of the big moments was when I first dropped into a skate park. I was 8 years old, and my dad and my brother got me to the top of this quarter pipe, and when I think back on that day, I just think they're trying to kill me. But like after I rolled away from that, it was really, it wasn't the first try. I do end up on my face a lot. But I after a couple crashes, I rolled away from it successfully, and I was like, whoa, like, it was kind of that moment for me that my wheelchair was much more than just a medical device, it was my bike, it was my skateboard, it was just a huge asset. And so, when in July 13th at 8:57 p.m., 2006, when I did my first backflip, sorry, it's kind of weird, but after I landed that, it really just opened my eyes to whoa, what is possible with this thing. And sometimes I'll do a flip at a skate park or something, and a kid is like, whoa, I wish I was on a wheelchair. Be careful what you wish. But if it happens, we'll hook you up.
We have a secret term for all of you who are out there and who aren't in wheelchairs. You're called TABS, T-A-B-S, temporarily able body. It's a secret term that not many people know, but that's how we recruit, bring people into our fraternity. Try it.
Comes with good parking. So, with your work, it's the internet. It's hits, it's videos, it's people viewing it. Talk a little bit about that component, because we don't see that much in the disability world. Talk about how it's helped grow your sport, it's helped grow what you do, and raised awareness. Yeah, when I first landed my backflip, the camp that I went to that has all the foam pits and stuff, they made a video and they put it up on YouTube. This was when YouTube was brand new, and then one day I just go to look at it and it had over 1 million views, and I was like, what? Like, I'm viral. And it was just like, I'm not allowed to say that word. But it was just crazy to see like how it, you know, from that point, I ended up getting sponsored. I got a tire sponsor, and then I started traveling more, and it just really, you know, gained momentum. And then, like over the years, just like Instagram has, you know, it's almost the dumber the video. Like, you know, the crashes definitely do better. But it's really been cool that not only have I been able to get, you know, more views or whatever, but being able to reach more people that, you know, are on chairs or have a disability. I get people from all over the place like messaging me like, hey, how do I get a wheelchair for the skate park and stuff? I'm like, just use the one you have. Thanks.
A question for any of you guys. How is the internet changing disability? How is it changing the work that you do? How is it impacting and raising awareness?
Well, I think it's great. I think it's bringing much more positive attention to the work we do in people with disabilities. A few years ago, we invented a pneumatically powered wheelchair that could drive underwater, and we put it in a Morgan's Inspirational, which is a fully accessible water park down in San Antonio. The New York Times did a story about it, and it got 15 million views. And you know, now there's a company that's bringing it to market, and it's not only being used by people with disabilities, but also big box stores and others that want to be more green friendly and not have to get rid of batteries and dispose of them or looking at as well. And that wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the fact that you can post things on social media, and then mainstream media might actually catch up and put them on social media as well. And people look at that, and now you've got you know, kids in a water park to people using them in grocery stores, right? It just kind of, in some ways, normalizes what we do. It's, like you said, with wheels, you know, he's just a person who rides his wheelchair.
Sam or Noah, how's the internet helped you?
Well, back to 20 years ago, I mean, now, if you're injured, there's lots of resources online and lots of information about this. You know, to do inspirational stories of people that can hopefully, you know, knock that neurosurgeon back a few steps, you know, or challenge some people. But you know, again, the you know, the technology, the information, getting that out. You know, before it was word of mouth, now you know, different people can try it. Social media aspect. I'm too old. I don't have social media, but guys like these are you know, you know, getting out there, getting the word out there because of it. And, gosh, you know, yeah, across the other stuff. I mean, you know, communication, whether it's you know, any product that's over you know, trade show, getting that out to the masses because you know, an accessible vehicle or a chair is not something you need until you need it badly. And so you know, being able to tech reviews. I mean, there's so many things that have evolved over the last 20 years in that respect. So, information is king.
Yeah, and learning and seeing how you drive, the cameras in the car, that's groundbreaking. People can learn from that.
Yeah, the irony of that is everybody thinks like, you know, if you take it to university, it'll take multiple years and millions of dollars, but the real, what's the word, unique thing about that project is that every piece in that car is anywhere from 10 to 30-year-old technology that had been used, tried and proved, and redundancies and really effective. It had just never been combined in that fashion. As Arrow's claim to fame is they don't create anything new. Maybe it's the software to drive it, but you know, the computer, the infrared cameras, the sip and puff that I was using with gas and brake, I mean, it's all off the shelf. Just hadn't been used before. So because of that, they were able to get it done and get it done a lot less expensively than if you would have had to create all those pieces from scratch. So it's something to keep in the back of the mind. You know?
I think what I do, it would be almost impossible for anybody to even know. You know, I mean, on the scale that they do now, without the internet, without social media, the pictures pictures, the videos, and stuff like that. Probably true for Aaron too. You know, I mean, that's how people find out about what we're doing. It usually comes from some sort of social media channel or a search on Google somewhere.
Just like this being put on Facebook Live, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm using my phone now for everything, right? I mean, texting, dialing, emails. I mean, before 20 years ago, I'm trying to use Dragon and all this stuff, and now you get the internet. It was just extremely frustrating. So now I can get a lot more done with just a phone.
Yeah, and as far as getting more done, and when I think about meetings and stuff, when I first started, I was like, I traveled too much, and was trying to go to too many meetings. Now, when I meet with somebody, a lot of times it's on video conferences, and so meeting the people at Google on Google Hangouts, and I don't have to fly to New York every single time or to California or anything, and that's been a huge help and relieving a lot of stress on my body too.
Yeah. I want to switch and do a couple little rapid fire kind of questions. Just throw it out there, anybody can answer. What gets you guys, what motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
To me, it's the opportunity to help other people. So I'll just give you a little story. There was a few years, we've been working on this device where you can get so Sam can get out of bed in the morning by himself. So you, then basically the bed articulates, a robotic bed, and the wheelchair articulates in such a way that you get poured from the bed into the wheelchair or from the wheelchair back into the bed. And we took a prototype over to the Veterans Nursing Home in Pittsburgh. We had it in the lobby. And it was an early prototype. And this woman had came up to us, Carol, she was a wife of an older veteran. He'd been in the nursing home for 3 years, and she didn't try it out. And she left, and she came back to her doctor, her husband's doctor, and said, I want my husband to have one. So we had to quickly make one for her husband, and after 3 years, she was able to take her husband home. That motivates you every day.
Some more thoughts? What gets you guys? What motivates you guys? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Breakfast.
Which consists of what?
Usually a protein shake, and then, I know, nothing fancy, and then go to the gym, come back and make a terrible omelet. That's about it.
I think just getting more people involved in what we do. I think these past almost 2 decades now, seeing the veteran suicide rate go up and be where it's at has been a hard number to look at. And I felt like I was almost one of those statistics many times over when I was first hurt, and I just get stoked to see people get involved and staying on the move. I think that's what motivates me, makes me feel good about getting up and doing what we do every day.
I mean, for me, it's evolved right at the beginning of this competition. I wanted to teach that neurosurgeon wrong, and then I wanted to, my life to that point, I've been racing since I was 5 years old, so that was always wanting to beat the other guys. And so, that translated to the pony team, and then as it's evolved with the foundation and more recently driven, it was definitely in my face that I had good insurance, that I had a really supportive family, and 99% of the population doesn't have some of those elements, right? So we opened driven. I thought the one characteristic that was wrong with all of these activity-based therapy sessions is they can only take people who pay. And that's just a travesty because the people that need it the most can't pay. And so we set this up as a nonprofit. We raise money for it, we get scholarships, and the people that it's saving lives is just unbelievable. So I see that and work out there as much as I can, and just see that daily. So it's evolved to where it's really motivating me to try to figure out how to fund more of those and do more of that, because it's really changing lives at a daily basis. The research is great, but you just don't know until 3 or 5 years down the road if it's going to work. And it's not happening fast enough for any of us.
Thank you. The word inspirational can be interpreted lots of different ways. If I had $1 for every time in my life somebody came up and patted me on the head and said I was such an inspiration, I'd have a lot more in my wallet. How do you guys interpret the word inspirational, and how do you work it into your day, or do you?
I think as long as it's not being used just because somebody noticed that you got up and got your wheelchair for the day, I'm normally okay with it. But if it's just a passerby who says you're inspirational for sitting upright during the day, that one doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
To me, is if I can inspire younger people to become innovators and inventors, then I'm okay with it. But I agree. Just being alive is not really being inspirational. It's what you do with life.
I've been inspired to ask these two guys to my far right and far left to help me figure something out after this. So I'm going to have a conversation afterwards with some technology thing that I want help with, because I would love to be able to try to drive a rally car.
Wow.
That's pretty easy.
Challenge accepted.
Disability can sometimes be a downer. We have some additional challenges that other people don't have. How do you work through it? How do you work through the downers, those days or moments or longer periods of time that come with it? How do you keep going?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it'd be complete BS for me to sit here and say there's not down days or days of depression, especially when I can't teach my kid how to throw a football, that kind of stuff. But the flip side of it is, yeah, the family. I started the process with a 6-month-old and 2-year-old, and I definitely want to see them grow up and become active members of society. And I think to some extent my disabilities help with that. Now they're, my daughter's off doing volunteer work in Greece. Our music right now is scaring the hell out of me. Yeah, I mean, faith, family, community. And my wife, back to the inspirational thing. My wife and kids consider their daily mission to keep me grounded.
I think that's true of all of us. My wife does a good job of keeping me grounded as well. But I think it's true. It's family and just I think I've got still more to contribute to help other people and hopefully to train other people to not only take care of me at some point, but take care of others in the future. I think we've got we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I may be down for 36 in the morning, but then I gotta get up. I got mouths to feed. I got things to do. I got a full schedule. I can't let it,
I think that's important right there.
Yeah.
I think if you find enough things to hold yourself accountable to, that's normally the inspiration you need to get through the day. It's you owe it to other people, you owe it to projects that you started or whatever you did to see it through.
Well, I think the three of us, we got other people depend on us, right? So we're not there leading the way, and then there's other people that aren't going to get a paycheck or be able to take care of their families, and that's certainly a strong motivator to get moving.
When somebody tells you no, what do you think? You think what?
They don't know what they're talking about.
Any examples?
Well, no. I mean, one was, you gotta, like most of us, your life expectancy was, in my case, was, they said, oh, you'll live probably 10, maybe 15 years, right? You're only 4 years later. You shouldn't participate in sports because that will only hurt you. I mean, I've had my fair share of crashes, that's for sure, but I've always managed to get back up again. And, no, you can't become an engineer because people in wheelchairs can't do that. And people don't, the fact is that you haven't, it's kind of, you haven't walked a mile and in my shoes, you just don't know what it's like. So the answer is, you just gotta say, they're not fully informed, and we can do like that, like your quote says there, right? Carve a new path.
Aaron can't do a triple flip.
Thank you. Waiting for someone to say that.
It's all about attitude, right? I mean, when somebody tells you no, you can either sit on the couch and say, okay, or, say, prove wrong, so, and, there's a certain amount of population that will just take on the challenge, and a certain amount that won't. But, there's also this piece in the middle where I think if you give them encouragement, I don't know whether it's 30, 40, 50%, right? But if you give them encouragement, give them training, help them find some resources, then they can really step up and do it.
You also need, I don't know if you want the terms role models, but that's another beauty about the internet is you can go out there and find out, you got a school teacher, you got a professor, a scientist, you got a business person, you got an athlete, you got another, business person, foundation leader, and they go, oh, okay. There are people that are not sitting on the couch. There are some of the other options.
Your advice to anybody who has an idea to pursue is what?
Tell them they can't do it.
Why?
That's what my dad told me all the time. And, even when I wanted to join the Marine Corps, he either told me not to or that I couldn't make it. And, that's probably the biggest motivator. It also, you get to figure out what kind of person you're dealing with once you tell them that they can't do it. Because you're either just going to say you're right, that sounds too hard, or you're going to say, I bet you I can.
Yeah.
What is the question?
Your advice to anybody who has an idea to pursue.
I feel like always at the beginning, it's like this overwhelming thought, just even thinking about something. Like for me, like a trick, like when I first started thinking about doing double backflips, I'm not cool enough to do triples, but when I was working on the double, I was just like, oh, so sick, just even thinking about it. But once I started trying it, I would crash, and then I'd be like, discouraged, and at one point I was like, I'm just gonna quit this. I'm concussed, I'm tired of hurting. But I just kept figuring out each time I crashed, I was able to learn something from it, and it, in a sense kind of motivated me. And so just when you crash, get back up and send it again.
And if you do tell somebody like Aaron no, and he gets into his chair, on his chair, and starts doing it again, that's when it's time to start really encouraging him.
Yeah.
I think that's the most exciting thing to see right there. Somebody who wants to see that double through.
Yeah. 6 Guinness Book of World Records. Did I mention that? Is there going to be a 7th?
Got some I'm working on. One of them I'd like to do is a land speed record, so maybe I can get a tone.
You wrote? How fast do you want to go?
In a modified hand, right?
Dallas, man. There you go.
No sewer lids or potholes.
It's a mile and a half of runway.
Any of you guys have questions for each other? This is
We just asked them.
this is where we can make it into a presidential debate for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'll help you with the rally car if you help me jump out of a plane.
Done. That would be a fun day for both of us.
If you want to jump out of a plane, I think the thing to do is talk to the Black Gangers from the Special Forces. They're an awesome jump team, and they take a lot of wounded warriors and jump with them.
So do we, so if you want to go with us, you can too.
Yeah, I've learned one thing though, if you ever do get married, motto is, it's better to ask forgiveness than ask permission. 27 years with that.
Anything else you guys can think of? I've got a couple takeaways. I loved hearing you talk about why not. Why can't this happen? Why not me? Why shouldn't I be doing this? And when somebody tells me no, the theme of this, the overriding theme of the panel is challenge accepted. You've taken that and taken it to new levels, and you guys continue to do that. And I think that's something that we can all learn from. I also believe that action follows action. And this is a lesson that I kept hearing over and over and over today. One thing leads to another, a small step. A t-shirt in your garage leads to something. Dropping into a skate park leads to something. Thinking I want to get behind the wheel leads to something. Not liking your wheelchair, thinking this can be different. Action leads to action. That's a great takeaway that
And also that we need to start looking at our own history, because there's a lot of other people like Judy Newman and Ed Roberts and Justin Dart who all paved the ways. You know, Ed Roberts started the independent living movement, right? Giving people a lot of institutions. And Justin Dart's sort of the father of the ADA. They helped carve the way for us too. Bobby Hall did the first marathon. There is a history of, we're currently engaged, but there are others as well that are sort of taking up the challenge. Because we want the next generation to get involved. So it's great to see Wheels inspiring kids. Because I think if they can, when some kid does the first triple backflip,
I'm gonna cry.
right, then that'll be great.
That's pretty much the time we've got for today. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Coming from different parts of the country and being a part of this, speaking for the folks at NMEDA, this is really what the organization is about. And what you guys have shared with us, I think, is a foundation on which we can continue to grow and grow. So thank you guys for what you do, thank you for who you are, and thank you for joining us today.
You wanna see it?